And we all know, because we teach our kids this from an early age, there's number one and there's number two. Now, they didn't have Andrex in those days. Andrex? What's our... I don't know what a US toilet paper is. What? Charmin. They didn't have Charmin in those days. And so you had Handy Andy. These were all you had. Yes. Yeah. Begin to wonder. So you would use your left hand to clean up after number two. So this is your left hand, right? This is my left hand, right? So you would never, like, it was shame on you if you ever struck someone with your left hand, right? That brought shame on you. So you would never do that in their culture. What you would do if you were striking someone is you would strike them with the right hand. Now, we still hold this today. You strike someone with the back of the hand, that was conveying that they were inferior to you in every way. Okay? When you strike them with your hand open, you were treating them as an equal. So, when Jesus says, is there anyone else who would like to trade places with me right now? And you really have been waiting for this for some time. Andrea. When he said, I'm not really going to hit him. When he says, they strike you with the hand and the cheek, and you turn the other also. So you turn the other also. I have a problem now, right? Because if I strike him, well, I can't strike him like this, because that would be shame on me. So my only option is to strike him like this, which is to say, you're now my equal.
Let me give you an example of this. I may have used this at some time. I was speaking at the University of Malaysia, or I think it's called Malaya. It's the oldest Islamic university in Malaysia. And a professor of geology, he's a Christian gentleman, came to me and he told me this story. I wish I could remember his name. It's something like Gentle Lee or something like that. Very fine man. I'm talking several years ago. He took me out for dinner. He said Ahmed Deedat, the Muslim debater who's passed away from Durban, South Africa, who was taking on all comers, he came to speak at that university and he mocked the Christian there. And this gentleman stood up and he said, why are you mocking Christianity? And the man said, because it's a farce. He said, nobody can live the Sermon on the Mount. So Professor Lee said to him, why do you say that? He said, come on up here. So Professor Lee walked up to the front. And the man slapped him across the face. Ahmad Deedat slapped him across the face. He said, turn the other cheek now. And Professor Lee told me, he said, Ravi, my face was ringing with that slap. And I turned the other cheek to him. He said, Deedat didn't know what to do. The audience was packed. He said, all right, I won't go that route. But the Bible also says if a man asks you for your tunic, give him your cloak also.
He says this, if anyone wants to sue you and take your shirt, hand over your coat as well. Or if you want to take your coat, hand over your shirt as well. Now, here's the thing again here. They would have one garment on them in those days. If someone wanted to take that garment from them, they didn't have underwear. Right? So you know the way you have pants and then you have underpants? They didn't have that. So when you took someone's garment, their top garment from them, and then they give you their other garment, they now have nothing to wear. And in Jewish community, at that time, it was a scandal on the community for anyone to be naked in the community. It wasn't shame on the individual. It reflected that the community had failed to demonstrate God's generosity and his hospitality. And so for anyone to be naked or to be seen naked was offensive on them. We don't have time to open this up today, but you remember in the story of Noah where his son comes in and he sees his father naked in the tent. Do you remember who the curse went on? It didn't go on Noah, who was naked. It went on his son, who looked at his nakedness. Okay, so when Jesus says, hey, give them your other garment, they want to take that garment, just give them everything you're wearing. He's really saying, hey, you now reset the balance because the community will ensure that that'll never happen to you. They'll gather around you and they'll bring shame on the person who's trying to take everything from you. And again,
It's all right. I won't go that route. But the Bible also says if a man asks you for your tunic, give him your cloak also, whatever. He said, take your trousers off for me. And Professor Lee told me this himself. He said, I looked at the audience, many of my students in there. I said, please forgive me for doing this. And he took his trousers off and was standing in front of the audience in his underwear. And Deedat was just mocking and laughing at him. And then he picked up his clothes, walked out of there. He said, Ravi, my office was lined up with Muslim students the next day, begging for forgiveness for what was done to me.
And what Jesus is saying in this moment, when you force them to be equal, is this: your dignity and your destiny is not dependent on what they did to you. You're still in control in that moment. They cannot take control from you, but you can position your heart towards honor and hope even in the middle of wounding and hurt. He's really saying, hey, you now reset the balance because the community will ensure that that'll never happen to you. They'll gather around you and they'll bring shame on the person who's trying to take everything from you. And again, he's resetting the relationship. He's teaching us how to engage in the midst of loss. So the first illustration is about a world bigger than our wounds. The second illustration is about living a life that's greater than our loss. That people can't take from us what we freely give to them. Nobody can steal what you give.